Hello and welcome back to the Growing Revolution. I'm Eric Olson with Smart Pot Fabric Planners, and this week our guest is Emmanuel Arce, who goes by Ultimate Gardening on social media. He's a young, passionate gardener who's been building a growing audience of followers, and he loves using smart pots in the garden, so we wanted to get him on to talk about his passion. So, Emmanuel, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure joining on the live stream.
Yeah, nice to meet you live versus just chatting. So, can you tell folks where in the USA you are located and how long have you been gardening for?
So, in the United States, I'm actually located in the southern part of Florida, and I've been gardening for a little bit over 7 years now.
Nice. And how old are you now? Remind me.
I'm 16 years old.
Nice. You got your driver's license yet?
No, I haven't gone for that yet.
Well, that's pretty typical of younger folks. It seems like less
Yeah.
people are driving these days that are younger. Now that you guys have Uber, which I didn't have when I was your age. So, who got you into gardening, Emmanuel? Was it a family member or someone else, or did you just jump in yourself?
So it was actually between two people. Like the first one was my dad. He actually kind of already saw that I was interested in types like this, so he kind of like give me the jump start into gardening. But it did start off with kind of my aunt because I've been a florist longer than I've been a gardener. And kind of behind a flower arranging, I kind of got curious to see like where these flowers came from, and I kind of did a little bit of research behind it and saw where they came from, but never really understood the concept behind it. And I really wasn't interested in gardening at that time, but it seems to be that my dad wanted me to kind of get into gardening a little bit more. And so like one day we went to Lowe's, a local nursery here in our area, and he went to go grab something while I stayed in the garden center. And I was just warming around, and then I found a plant that I really liked, which was a red snapdragon, and he purchased it for me. And I planted it out in a little area he said that I could plant it in. And it literally inspired me to do more because I was so fascinated to see how it grew, the unique textures and features of the flower. And I just wanted to learn more, and it just kind of developed as it was.
Nice. So you started with ornamentals and then kind of got into veggies and herbs and stuff like that. So how did your garden? So I guess your gardening experience started with ornamentals, and then you got into veggies. And has your gardening, I guess, technique changed over the years?
It definitely has. It's never really stayed in a permanent gardening technique if it's not always evolving, because my garden tends to always evolve and I always have to adapt to the bipolar weather, like I say, down here in South Florida. And so I tend to always change my gardening techniques, like I said before, that I started with ornamentals. Like my expertise is in ornamentals. Like I know everything about ornamentals. But up until recently, like about a year or two ago, that's when I started to like dip into the waters of growing your own food. And now I kind of dedicate more time into growing my own food and showcasing that to other gardeners out there, which seems to be what more gardeners are interested into doing. And I kind of do ornamentals like a little side thing, like in between when I have time or when I have something interesting to showcase.
Yeah, and I think it's good to do both in the garden because I think the ornamentals tend to attract the pollinators, which then makes your fruits and veggies and herbs do a lot better. So, how are you feeding slash fertilizing your plants? Are you an organic fertilizer, synthetic? What are you using?
So, kind of towards the beginning of my gardening journey, I tend to use a lot of synthetic fertilizers, but slowly as I started developing more of but let's just say a kind of offset gardening technique, I just decided to jump into organic fertilizing since I do partner with certain companies that create organic fertilizers. And like I always say, I always tend to find the best results with organic fertilizers, since what organic fertilizers contain in them is usually like organic matter, and we're just returning it back into the earth, which amends our soil, which feeds our plants the nutritious value that they need to perform the best in the garden. So I kind of laid off in synthetics, and I am pure organic fertilizing now and organic treating.
Awesome. Awesome. So, Emmanuel, most people don't really get into gardening until, I don't know, at least their 20s or 30s. As a younger person, how do companies like ours reach those younger demographics that are either like beginner gardeners or yet to start? What do you think?
So when I was interested in partnering with companies, it was definitely like a bit of a struggled to get to what I wanted to achieve, since like I started very young. I started to document my gardening journey on media platforms like around 3 years ago, and so I was 13 when I started. And a lot of companies had issues partnering with me because I think that they thought that I didn't have the, let's just say, like the experience or the level of knowledge to carry an audience, either like to teach them the proper things they need to learn about gardening. And so in the beginning, it was a lot of like denials, or like a lot of people saying, not right now, but probably later in the future, we'll partner with you. But then certain companies like you guys and other amazing companies saw the potential in my platforms and saw the level of knowledge that I provided for my audience members. And they just went for it. And we got to where we got. And I tend to do my best doing it because, like you said, not a lot of young gardeners nowadays are interested in doing a lot of things in the garden, if not probably like a side hobby. But thanks to the garden industry and to a whole bunch of other things, we've been introducing a whole bunch of young gardeners into our industry. Like one of them who I recently got into contact, which is one called Joshua in Joshua's Gardens. He is around my age, and he does great things in the garden. He works at a nursery as well. And it's just slowly by slowly it's starting to improve the garden industry, because we're starting to introduce more younger gardeners into our industry, and it excites me. But definitely, when it comes to working with companies, you're going to have a lot of responsibilities and duties to stay on top of it. But yeah.
Well, you have the passion for it, so you kind of hit us up, and we were like, well, you look like you're on the right path, and then after seeing you do more postings, I was like, all right, I think Emmanuel, he's ready to kind of join the Smart Pot family. So good to see that you're progressing and still hungry to keep growing. So getting on to kind of the career path, have you thought of what kind of career you'd like to get into after high school? Is it in the horticulture field or somewhere else altogether?
No, definitely it's staying into the horticultural field. Like I found my passion in gardening, and once I started seeing that my passion was escalating, as well as my expertise and my levels of knowledge were escalating, I was like, this is definitely something I want to take upon a career. And so I definitely have a few options to go for. I know my main option right now is to create my own nursery and own my own nursery underneath my name. I definitely want to have a nursery, since it's been a dream of mine. Because since I started my gardening journey, I've always wanted to grow plants and provide them and sell them to the local community. And so that's definitely like my first option. And my second option has to be becoming a plant breeder, creating like new varieties of plants to showcase into the world of what I create.
Oh, very cool. I know for a fact that a large number of nurseries throughout the country started as like a garage or a backyard operation. So just like Apple and all those other companies started in garages. So the main point is to start somewhere and then grow. So cool on you for uh, looking to stick with horticulture. It's not necessarily an industry that you'll get rich on, but it's a great industry to be in because it's just steady. The people in it are so good, and you're doing God's work, working with plants and stuff. So awesome. Um, how did you get introduced to Smart Pot containers in the first place? And have you noticed any difference in your garden since you started using them?
So I actually came to notice smart pots through a very famous gardener, which you guys are really close to, which is Callie Kim. She does follow me through my media platforms as well, but I was watching her videos in the early stages of me growing my own food, and I got to notice smart pot fabric containers, and I was like really interested in trying some since that technique or that concept of using a fabric container. I never really thought of it, but I was like, that seems like a great idea. And so I found you guys through Callie Kim. And once I received the products and I've been working with them in my garden, it's been like absolute miracles because whatever I put in it always seems to succeed. Like it's a like what I found with fabric containers, especially with smart pots, is that I'm able to control what my plants are receiving as well as the soil never gets compacted. If not, it always stays air and fluffy since it tends to put air circulation in and out, and the plants never get root bound, which is something I absolutely love. So it allows a lot of benefits to it using smart pots, especially the which is the raised beds, which is what I mostly have of you guys. And I always love using them, and I'm always like anxious to put a new variety in there. Like right now I have Brussels sprouts as well as onions in another one and tomatoes in another one, and they're all performing great right now. And so I definitely found that my gardening experience definitely elevated once I introduced smart pots into my proper garden.
Awesome. Awesome. I love hearing those stories. So, do you have any favorite tips for gardening success besides growing in smart pots?
So for gardening success, there's always going to be mistakes along the way, which we all learn from our mistakes. There's not one perfect gardener who's never killed a plant. So what I always say is always try out new things, because what those new things allow is for you to learn. Either if you fail at it, you'll be able to learn what you did wrong and improve from it the following up growing season. And also stick with your heavy hitters. For example, down here in South Florida, when it comes to ornamental gardening, tropical hibiscus, pentis, all those great things grow in South Florida. So I always have in mind that those will always succeed in my garden. But it's good to once in a while introduce new varieties to see how they will do, to not only elevate the visual effects in your garden, but also to just try something new and also inspire people who are walking by to say, what's that variety? And them trying them out themselves. But I always say to never feel like down once you do a mistake, because you'll learn from it. Always try out new things, but always keep in mind your heavy hitters in the garden, so you're never left with an empty hand or an empty growing season. So you'll always have something to look up to every at the end of every growing season.
I love that tip. Love it. So, Emmanuel, where do you see yourself and ultimate gardening in the future?
Whew. From this point moving forward, I don't really know, but I definitely know that from this point moving forward, we're definitely going to be moving upwards since it's been showing. Ever since I started my YouTube channel, I was quite hesitant in it because I didn't know how it would take. Because YouTube is a platform that is like algorithm is really like unbalanced, especially since they see a young person. I don't get a lot of views. Although I do have a decent amount of audience or subscribers per se, my views don't match up to those subscribers due to people just subscribing and that's it. But I have been seeing my subscriber count increasing over the few a few days, as well as my views and the watch time hours. So basing off of that, I feel like from this point moving forward, we're definitely going upwards. And I do, from my social media platform, I definitely see like us improving and getting big at one point, and definitely like branching out and creating different brands out there from my social media platform. Like for example, Epic Gardening, he great gardener. He got his started from a small level, then increased, and now he owns his own like full on website that he's able to have botanical interests and everything. So that's where I kind of see me heading in that direction, but it's definitely up to where it takes us. So
Yeah, Kevin at Epic Gardening, he's been killing it for a number of years. So that's a good goal to shoot for, to be like him. He's doing great work. So, Emmanuel, that was really all the questions that I had today, and it's really been a pleasure to get to know you more, learn more about what you're doing down in South Florida. Can you tell folks where they can find you, like social media handle wise?
So I am on a few platforms, mainly three right now, which is YouTube under the name Ultimate Gardening as it is. On Instagram, it is ultimate underscore gardening, and on TikTok is ultimate dot gardening. So those are the three main platforms in which I'm uploading videos and staying on top of.
Awesome. Well, Emmanuel, we enjoy your content and we're looking forward to seeing what you're doing going forward. If you ever open a garden center, you better be selling smart pots up in there. And until next time, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
No problem. Thanks. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.